Mindset Mavericks, your blueprint for bold thinking and boundless growth.
Welcome to Mindset Mavericks. Today we've got Cam Awesome joining us as a guest. So Cam Awesome's a powerhouse in and out of the boxing ring. He's a multi-time national champion in super heavyweight division. He's known for skill, discipline and relentless work ethic. But beyond his accolade in the sport, Cam's built a reputation as a motivational speaker, inspiring thousands with his message of resilience, self-improvement and mental toughness. His journey from bullied teen to an elite athlete is proof that mindset can shape your reality. So in this episode, we'll explore what it takes to train like a champion, the mental discipline forged in the ring, and how Cam uses his experiences to empower others in their own journeys. So welcome to Mindset Mavericks and thank you for joining us.
And that was a dope intro. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And like I say, you've got a lot of experience of your boxing. You've been in the Olympics at boxing, you've been national champion, and I'm fascinated just to know what it's actually like to compete at the highest levels of boxing in a heavyweight division of all the divisions.
Now that I look back at it, I'm like, oh, that was a big deal. But when I was doing it, I was very conscious of never making a fight any bigger than sparring. And whether it's a fight in a small gym or a fight in front of 10,000 people, to me, there's no difference. And I put no weight on it. And I had to train myself to do that because if I make the moment too big, it becomes harder for me to be as big as the moment. But if I just mentally treat it as something normal, routine, then I'll be easier for me to dominate.
Yeah, it's a great skill to have because, like you say, as soon as you start piling up pressure on yourself, you can end up getting that anxiety or stress or overthinking things. What I'd love to actually do and find out a little bit about is your background and how you got into boxing in the first place. Was there something that inspired you to get into boxing, or how did that?
Yeah, I dealt with bullying in school and I had confidence issues. I lacked confidence and I didn't know what anxiety was, but I was afraid all of the time. Like something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but school was completely secondary. Like worry was number one in my mind. And I thought if I joined the boxing gym, I can be more physically. I want to join the boxing gym so I can look like a boxer. I didn't necessarily want to box because I thought if I joined the boxing gym, I'd have more, I'd be able to defend myself if I became a boxer or if I just looked like a boxer.
Yeah, because you're obviously quite a big guy now and going through your boxing career. But what was that? What were you like as a teenager growing up? You mentioned you were being bullied. But are you able to share a little bit about what that was like and what that was about?
Yeah, the first kind of big incident that happened, I was in third grade, and a kid slammed my head into a wall, and I was sent to the hospital. And my school's solution was to release me 10 minutes early, so I could get home before he got to me, because I had to walk past his house to get home.
Wow.
And I knew when I was walking home, like, okay, I'm afraid. I'm a coward. I'm afraid to fight that kid. And I didn't like going outside because he might be out there. And I was really good at avoiding confrontation now that I look back at it. In middle school, I volunteered in the nurse's office during the lunch hour. And I wasn't looking to give back. I just was afraid to be in the lunchroom around all those people. Something might happen. And then in ninth grade, we got into an altercation with a girl, but in high school terms, I got beat up by a girl. Now that I look back at it, I thought every time someone looked at me, it's like, that's a kid that got beat up by a girl. Most people could probably forgot about it the next day. But to me, I had put so much on it and I was so afraid something was going to happen. I thought if I joined the boxing gym, that would go away. And I thought if I looked like a boxer, I would have an intimidating exterior, so I'd be safe. And my thought process was the faster I worked out and the harder I worked out in the gym, the faster it would happen and the faster I would be safe. And I was able to do the things that most other boxers in the gym wasn't willing to do. TNT, things that take no talent. I was the first one at the gym. I was the last one that gone. I was constantly pushing myself to get to the next level, to get in better shape. And I got in such good shape. My coach was like, Cam, you should get in the ring and spar. And I was like, no, thanks. I don't think my mom's gonna let me. And everyone laughed. And I was like, I'm joking. I'll get in the ring. And I was so afraid because again, I'm so afraid of confrontation. But I put myself in this situation. And my solution was during the sparring match, I just ran from my opponent. They say you have to be in the ring for 3 minutes. They never said you have to fight
Yeah.
for the entire 3 minutes. So my strategy was defense, just to run away.
Yeah.
And I burned more calories sparring than doing anything else. So I got addicted to sparring. And I would spar everyone in the gym, no matter how big you were, how small you were. And I was great to spar because I don't hit hard. Do a lot of moving, and I'm a big guy, so you can hit me as hard as you
Yeah.
want. And I got so good at sparring that I eventually had my first fight. And I was so good at defense that if you can't hit me, you can't win.
Yeah. And at which point was it that you actually realised you were getting good at this? And was it from that point of your coach telling you, actually, you're getting good, you should get into sparring? Or did that come later?
No, it was so I started boxing in 11th grade. My final year of high school, my parents moved from New York to Florida. And I realized when I got to Florida, no one knew me, so I could be anyone I wanted to be. And I didn't look at it like that at the time, but I realized I could reinvent myself. Instead of being that anxious coward in New York, I could be this outgoing, charming, funny guy. Everyone bought it in Florida. They all
Yeah.
thought I was this person. When I realized I could be successful, the boxing gym was 6 miles away from my high school. So it's like a 10K,
Yeah.
maybe. I had to, it was hot Florida sun, and I had to just take a 3 hour walk every day after school. And this was without music. So I made up stories in my head to keep myself entertained. And if I was going to be making up stories, I don't know. And this is not something where I saw it when I was younger and I was a clairvoyant and I had foresight. No, I just thought if I'm going to make up a story, I'm going to be the superstar in all of my stories.
That sounds
Like
like
I'm
a
going to be the
good plan to
best.
me. Yep.
Yeah. So I'd make up these stories about me winning in boxing. I had all the championship belts, all the money, all the cars, all the jewelry. I deserved everything. I was the best. Bro, I pat myself on the back for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. It was obsessive. But I realized there's a direct correlation between how highly I spoke about myself and how well I did at the gym. And that plus being in a new environment where no one knew who I was and I was getting to identify myself, I got a completely fresh start on who I was as a person and the expectations people had around me.
I think one of the things I'm really interested in is you've mentioned it seems like the fear that you had in these early days was definitely a motivational factor and it's what spurred you on to get started. But was there a point when that switched then from being kind of running away from fear to actually having that self-confidence? Can you see a point in time when that changed your motivation?
Uh, it it was during that walk. It was during that walk because I realized that it doesn't matter how tough you are outside the ring or your situation outside the ring, how much money you have, how tough the neighborhood you are from. When we're in the ring, the only thing that matters is the work that we put in. And it was objective. And I realized if I worked on something, I got better at that thing. And my thought process in boxing was when I realized the more you do something, the better you become. Here was my thought process. John, let's say you were the same age and weight, right? And you have 100 boxing matches and I have 3 boxing matches and we were to fight, which one would you bet on?
Yeah, it sounds quite simple when you put it in those terms, doesn't it? Yeah, it sounds pretty
So,
straightforward.
so my thought process was you would, and by the way, with you with 100 fights, I never even said your record. You could be 10 wins and 90 losses, and you would still be chosen over the person with 3 matches because experience has that much weight. So I didn't care what my record was. I decided to fight the best boxers all the time. And I didn't care about losses because it didn't matter. the only thing that mattered was the next fight. So it allowed me to see failure in a different way.
And it sounds like you were certainly putting that a lot of effort in at the time. So to be the standard and level that you were at, what was your training regime like?
So I had this thing where I basically coached myself. I realized what most boxers were doing was just what boxers before them did. Like, people hit the speed bag. Personally, I think it's a waste of time. You don't punch up here. Your footwork's not the same. It's not hand-eye coordination if you can do it with your eyes closed. The average boxer hits the speed bag 4 rounds of workout. Let's say they work out 250 days a year. For math purposes, that's 1,000 rounds a year. Works out to be 69 hours, John. If you had an extra 69 hours in the gym to work on something, would you work on something that felt and looked cool but was ineffective? Or would you spend that time working on defense, establishing a jab, improving your conditioning? So my approach in boxing was I only worked on the things I thought was beneficial, which was sparring. You
Yeah.
can't develop bad habits when you're sparring. Problem with that is it's dangerous because you're taking a lot of damage over a long span of time. So defense was always a high priority for me.
Yeah, just because I think a lot of what you're saying, boxing's definitely a mental game as much as it is a physical game. So you're putting all these hours, but what other things were you doing to try and build that mental toughness, to stay disciplined, to keep doing that training? So I'm sure there must have been a lot of days or weeks where you didn't want to do any training at all.
Yeah, we don't have healthcare in the US. If you're the number one boxer in the country, you get health insurance. That was a great motivator. Also, I didn't go to college. I had no backup plan. I didn't have skills. I didn't want to get a job. So I realized if I could just continue to box at a high level, that was a motivation because there was nothing else I had.
Yeah, was there a particular fight, for example? Like I say, you've been national champion, you've fought at the Olympics. When's the first time you kind of got into the boxing ring and realised the amount of pressure or how big the spotlight was on the fight you're about to undertake?
I never put any pressure on anything.
No.
I treated the I treated the finals of a national championship the same way I treat a sparring session on a Wednesday. So I fought in the 2016 Olympic trials. I do stand-up comedy. I performed at the Laugh Factory that week leading up to the Olympic trials. Because to me, if you do anything different in a fight than you do in sparring, then why are you preparing? Like, I don't sit down in between rounds in sparring. Why would I sit down in between rounds in my fight? I practice and prepare the way I perform.
Was there something that kind of prompted you to do it that way? Because that does seem like a bit of an unusual or unconventional approach.
Yes. I remember it was when I won my first state championship. I won Florida State Championship, and I fought in Columbia, South Carolina, which means nothing to someone from the UK, but it was a small town, and our venue got flooded out or something because of a hurricane. So the only place we could find to put the ring was a funeral home. So there's this boxing match in a funeral home, and it was my first regional championships. And I remember putting the gloves on and my hands were shaking. And I remember pulling myself out of the moment, and it was like, oh, we have a decision to make here. We can continue to shake, or we could do mental gymnastics until we find a way out of this. And I looked at my opponent and I'm like, well, he's got big muscles and he's strong. He's definitely going to get tired after 2 minutes. I just need to survive for 2 minutes. There's nothing to be nervous about. I literally do this all the time. I actually have more boxing matches than him. So statistically, if I do everything I am supposed to do, I should win. Then I should win. So I'm going to win. I know I'm going to win. Obviously, he knows I have more boxing matches than him. I'm more experienced. He knows I'm going to win. I mean, the ref probably sure I'm going to win. And I convince myself I'm going to win. And I'm really good at the mental gymnastics of it, because if I could just convince myself I am better than you, I think I'll win. And I think a lot of times in a boxing match, two opponents, when they look at each other and both of them know who's supposed to win. And that person usually wins. It's unsaid. When great fights happen is when there's a miscommunication and both of them think they're supposed to win.
Yeah. It kind
But
of
for the
sounds,
most part, it's mental.
yeah, it sounds a little bit like that whole saying of if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. A lot of it's in that mindset, but I understand it can be very difficult to bring yourself out of those situations and think rationally about it in those ways. Do you have any tips for how you do that? If you are in a situation, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling becoming overwhelmed, what can you actually do to bring yourself out of that situation and start thinking rationally about it?
I think today you can't do anything. Right now, you can't do anything, but you can do something tomorrow. And that starts today. And it's the reality you create. Nothing's real and everything's real. It's complicated. But the way your brain works, once you realize that, you realize why everything makes sense. Like your brain is just trying to make stories. Your reticular activating system, have you ever heard of it?
Yep.
Okay, so your brain takes in billions of bits of information and it filters it through your RAS to about 35 bits. So it goes from billions of bits to 35. It's a filter. So what you seek is what you find. So if you go shopping for a yellow car all weekend, you don't find it, but after that, you start seeing yellow cars everywhere. It was the second you told your mind, hey, I'm looking for that thing, your brain points it out. There's so
Yeah.
many things, your brain can't point it all out. So what you seek is what you find. What are you seeking? And once I figured that out, I realized what worked for me through my boxing career, but now I'm diagnosing and figuring out why it worked. If your brain is looking for something, it's why whichever car you own happens to be one of the most popular cars on the road. It's because it's what your brain's already looking for. Now, if you say, hey, my name is John and I am not capable, your brain will sort through the billions of bits of information, ignore all the reasons why John is capable, and show him the few bits of reasons to confirm his already beliefs. So when I started speaking to myself highly for 15 hours a week, I found reasons why I was a winner. I made sure I won. I ended up winning the Olympic trials for the US and I was going to the London Olympics for the US and I got kicked off the Olympic team. And it was a drug testing issue. I didn't actually test positive. I didn't send my paperwork in and left the country to fight in a tournament where they drug tested me to fight in, but I didn't tell the drug testing agency I was leaving the country. It sucked because I didn't even do anything. It was a paperwork infraction.
Yeah.
But I felt like a loser because I had this, it was such a blow to my ego because I speak to myself highly. I'm the man, I'm the best.
Yeah.
And if anyone disagreed, even if I tried something else and I wasn't good at it, I could look at my national championship. I am the reigning heavyweight. Accept me, love me.
Yeah, I think
Then that was all gone.
that's gonna come on to that because I wanted to talk a little bit about resilience. And I know there was issue with the testing. And losing in general is a bit of a reality in boxing anyways. How do you handle losses and how do they shape your approach to future fights? And similarly with the incident you've just talked about where you've had this infraction for around the drugs test, which is one that you didn't actually take, you didn't fail a drug test, but it was essentially paperwork related. But how do you come back and overcome those obstacles?
Great question. Losing. So how do I deal with losing? I hate losing. There's nothing more I hate than losing. I hate losing more than I like winning. Winning pales in comparison to how bad losing is for me. I lose sleep when I lose. It doesn't have to be anything real. Like I can lose a game of Monopoly. It might mess up my
Yeah.
weekend. That's how much I hate losing. I will do everything in my power not to have that feeling. Now, I have the choice of mentally making losing less hurtful. We have that. I can remove that value, or I can use that as incentive to work out harder, to sacrifice more, to give more effort, just so I don't experience that feeling of losing. And if I am handed an L and I have to sit with that loss, I lose sleep and I obsess over it. I watch film, and every time I watch the film, I know what's going to happen, but I'm hoping it doesn't happen. And my stomach is in knots, and it's so uncomfortable. And I endure that. And I realize why I lost. And I make sure I do everything in my power not to feel that again. And that's how I handle a loss. I torture myself with it.
That's quite a strong reaction to losing, and I'm sure you recognise it in yourself. It's quite a strong reaction to losing. But do you know where that
Yeah, I don't do
stemmed
game
from?
night anymore.
And do you know where it was that visceral hate of losing came from? Was there something that's kind of made you hate losing that much, or do you think that's just inbuilt and ingrained in you?
I think, and I'm like learning more about myself as I'm getting older. I think losing's so embarrassing, and I was afraid to be embarrassed because all those people like are watching, like, you lost, and I don't know if they're saying that or not, but I realized in boxing, I was never afraid to get physically hurt or the pain. That was never my fear. My fear was to be knocked out and humiliated, to be my opponent's profile picture, to be turned into a GIF. Those fears is what made me work out so hard.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of it does stem back to the time of being bullied and that whole feeling of what it was like going through that experience. Do you think you would have been as successful if you hadn't had that hardship in those early days?
No, I don't think I would be as successful. Like if I had like a supporting family who's like, you can do it. No, I'd probably not change my last name to Awesome and
Yeah.
strive to be the best at everything. I'm grateful for the way I grew up. And I don't have children, but I do understand that I became who I am because of the things I've experienced and the hardships I've overcome. How much am I willing to let my kids suffer?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. I think you've just touched on something there as well, which I wanted to ask about. Is just the fact you did change your name to Awesome, and why did that come about? Was that purely for promotional and for boxing, or was it more of a significant thing in your mind why you did that?
So here's why I did it. So I left high school in my senior year, went to Florida. I got to go back and walk for my graduation, my old high school. And I couldn't wait to go back because like I was in shape now. I lost weight. I was confident. I had muscles. And the second I walked into those school doors, I just reverted into that unconfident person I used to be. Couldn't figure out why. It was like my cam wasn't camming, like the battery was out of my back. And I went back to Florida and then everything went back to normal. And I was this outgoing person again. And when I got suspended, I was this super confident person, and that all went away. And I was beating myself up constantly. And when it was time to return to boxing, because I have no other skills, I have to box. I understand that I'm not good at anything else. Like, got to keep it real sometimes. I was 23 years old and I couldn't get myself to work out and get back in shape. And I was beating myself up one day. I'm like, you fat loser, POS, how'd you get here? And I realized there's a difference between me in 2012 and the me walking to high school, walking to the gym in high school. One of us liked me. And I realize now, in hindsight, when I look back at it, the greatest things I accomplished is when I thought I was going to accomplish them, when I thought I deserved to accomplish them. And one of the major comments I would read on social media after my suspension, because if you wear a cape and you dance in the ring and you flip in the ring, you open yourself up to certain criticisms. And one of them was, I bet he's humble now. And that one struck me as odd because I thought being humble was a good thing. And then I looked up the definition of humble. John, have you ever done it?
I haven't, so yeah, enlighten me.
Do do you have your phone on you?
I do, yeah.
Okay, if you can look up the definition of humble. John, do you have
I do. I've got two teenage boys.
cool, let's go with the second
Yeah.
one. When you read this definition, I want you to think of that son.
Okay, so humble describes someone who is modest, lacking pride, and not arrogant or assertive.
Does that sound positive?
I wouldn't say it does, not with the lacking pride, certainly, part of it.
The Latin root word is lowly. So whichever definition you get, at the root of it, it's lowly.
Yeah,
And you can't ask your son to reach for the stars as you tell him to, while remaining lowly. And if you wouldn't wish that on your, because you want your son to accomplish great things, right?
yeah, certainly. 100%.
So you wouldn't wish humility on him. Why would you ever wish that upon yourself? Has being humble ever served you? And this is different than humble leadership. I'm talking about personally. Before you were an employee, you're a person.
Yeah. I think it sounds like what can often happen to people is that you end up, your whole being starts being linked and connected to your accomplishments in life. Whether it's if you're doing well, you're a great person. If something goes wrong, then you're a bad person, etc. And I can see how certainly having this issue, the infraction, how that could impact how you feel about yourself. Have you got better at separating your accomplishments and what's going on in your life with you as a person now?
Yes, I did for a span of time, uh, probably between 2018 and like 2022. I realized I was able to take my worth outside of my accomplishments. But then I understood how capitalism works. And I'm going to leverage my accomplishments to help build my speaking
Yeah,
business and brand myself. So now I found myself leaning on that again. But I had put in 2012 all my value on the things I've won. And I identified as an athlete. And when that was taken from me, I had to figure out who I am. And I thought about who I was before I was afraid all of the time. I was goofy, I was fun, I was outgoing, and I wanted to be that person again. So I legally changed my last name to Awesome and decided I was going to speak highly of myself. I know it rubs people the wrong way that I changed my last name to Awesome, but there's enough post-it notes out there on your mirror saying, I am worthy, I am worth it. That's no different than I am awesome. I saw it as an affirmation of how I was going to carry myself.
yeah, and it's like I say, if it works for you, I think whatever works for any individual to get them through any particular situation, and if that is giving you positive vibes and that's helping you be more confident and getting to where you need to be, I think that should be encouraged.
Yeah. I also did it because I no longer identified as an athlete, but identified as an entertainer because I realized that sports won't be there forever.
Yeah,
And I needed to be able to transition out of sports. So I changed my last name to Awesome. I changed the way I look at the world. I started to carry myself in a different light. And I started to do stand up comedy and speak at schools while I traveled the country boxing because I wanted to build a career for myself for after sports.
yeah, it's quite a fascinating change, and it's quite a pivot from boxing to stand-up comedy. So, and I know you mentioned earlier that you were doing stand-up comedy the week of a fight as well. So it's certainly something you'd been involved with for a while. So what was it that made you want to go into comedy as well, which is seems so far removed from professional boxing?
Yeah, so I really just wanted to, I never wanted to be a boxer. I did it because I was afraid. That wasn't my passion. But I saw the benefits that came along with it. Like I was really good at it, which is great. I got to travel around the world. People liked me. There's no reason why I should stop. And then I got suspended. And the reason why I was boxing is I thought if I became good enough at boxing, I'd get my own TV show because I wanted to be an actor of some sorts. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be a performer. And I thought boxing would be my transition into that. And then when I got kicked off the Olympic team, I looked at my life. I was like, I've been to all these countries, I've done all this boxing. I don't even like boxing. I haven't done any of the things I wanted to do. And I used to love this comic, Patrice O'Neill. So I would go during my suspension. I started going to open mic nights and trying jokes out. And again, I understand athletes get treated special. So because I was traveling around the country and I was a boxer, I got to perform comedy at all these places that I wasn't good enough to perform at. But as we realized before, you can only be bad at something for so long. It allowed me to improve as a comic a lot faster.
Can you tell me about a challenge outside of boxing that's tested your resilience?
Challenge outside of boxing. One of them was even the challenge of being able to box, the finances that came with it. It was always a hustle. You couldn't get a job as a boxer because you have camps and competition. No job is going to give you 3 weeks off to train and another 3 weeks off to go fight in Russia. So it's like, it's hard to get a job. So you get companies that sponsor you, but they don't give you money. They'll give you like $500 in supplements. And then I would turn around, I would sell those supplements, and I would have different companies sending me different things every month, and I would sell them to individual people. And I had this whole system going to keep myself afloat financially. And I think that was one of the struggles that I had as an athlete. But it allowed me this ability to be not just resilient, but resourceful. When your back's to the wall, it forces you to come up with things. And every time your back's been against the wall, you figured it out, right?
Yeah.
And every time you figured it out, you learned a skill. And sometimes your back only gets to the wall when it accidentally happens. But I'm a believer that if you dig yourself in a hole, you will find your way out. And one of the things I do is the reason why I wore cape into the ring is you can't wear a cape to the ring and lose. Like I dug myself in that hole. I'm like, okay, we have to burn the boats. We got to make sure we win.
What do you do to try and leverage your personal brand?
Oh yeah, personal branding. So I didn't care about personal branding after I came back in 2012. I wanted to be authentically as much as I can me. So my name's Cam F. Awesome. And I have shot myself in the foot by putting the F in my name. Because a lot of schools, they're not going to book a speaker with the F in their name because the kids are going to be like, what does that F stand for? But when I decided to return to boxing, I wanted to be the person I used to be when I was a kid. And 12-year-old me would have had the F in my name if I could. And to me, that F represents I will not fall in line with what society expects me to do. You're going to accept the F. You're going to accept me for who I am. You don't even have to like me. I really like if you do, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So for me, my brand is authentically me. And I changed. And here's the problem, because a brand needs to be consistent. John, I have very strong opinions on things. But if you share an opinion with me and now I have more information, well, I'm going to change my mind. I feel like people get locked into their brand or this persona that they create, and now they can't veer off from the thing that they used to do because they've built this person. So I'm like, I don't really have a brand. I'm me. It's a little sloppy, John. I'm not going to lie. My speaking could be a lot like my speaking career would be a lot better if I would just do what everyone else is doing. I could do the LinkedIn post and I can wear the blazer, I can wear a suit. But John, I'm not going to wear a suit because I wouldn't wear a suit normally. With the exception, I will wear a suit if I'm emceeing events. I like wearing a suit when I MC events. That's the only time I'll really wear a suit. But for the most part, if I'm on stage, I'm going to dress like me because that's not even a brand. It's what I would wear. I wear my nicer joggers, the
Yeah.
ones that I haven't put in the dryer too long, so they're kind of stretchy. But I wear nice clothes, but I dress like I'm me, and it's hard.
But yeah, it's touching on what we were saying earlier about being authentic, though. It's like if you're dressing how you dress every day, then you're going to feel comfortable, you're going to be more relaxed, you're going to be given a truer version of yourself. So no, I'd love that you're not conforming to what society is saying we should be doing. So no, I think it's a great approach to it.
Yeah, but I do want to acknowledge the difficulties behind it because I understand if I were to just conform and fit in more, I would get more opportunities and I would get more speaking engagements. I would get on more stages. And I feel like sometimes I'm just throwing opportunities away and I'm being hard headed. And I'm like, I could just take the F out of my name. I can just wear the suit. So, and, you know, some months are good in speaking, some months aren't. My income relies on my ability to be booked as a speaker. And it's the balance of, do I want to thrive and make the most and sell out? But I think if I did, it would just make me very successful for maybe 2 or 3 years. If I do it this way, I think it will give me longevity in speaking. Now, I might be wrong and I just come off distasteful to everyone, but this is the route I'm taking.
So, what is it that stops you from conforming? I know you've mentioned about how you're feeling more comfortable, but what's that kind of mental barrier that's stopping you from doing it? Why don't you just comply?
Because I'd get lost in the herd. I'm not smart nor talented enough to compete with everyone and stand out. But if I do things my own way and I separate myself from the herd, when I reconnect again, I'll either be way in the back or all the way in the front. So I'm more of a swing for the fences type of guy. So if you can think about a bell curve where most people fall in, that to me, it's the easiest fun, but it's the least satisfying. And I will see myself as an innovator. Now I'm just a crazy person. But in boxing, when I got kicked off the Olympic team, I was the number one boxer in the country for 4 years. I could have just turned pro and had made money that way. Instead, I would just remain broke for another 5 or 6 years because I didn't want to turn pro in boxing. Boxers and a lot of athletes see success as turning pro in their sport, but I see success as longevity in life. I could turn pro in boxing and compete up to the age of 40, make great money, but after that, after 40, it's a hard fall. Or I can go a different route, bet on myself. And although I'm not making what I would make if I was boxing, I can pay my bills and I'm doing the thing I love. I'm on stages, I get to perform. And the benefit is, John, the older I get, the more my words are worth. Sports don't work that way. So I chose the path with longevity.
Just when you talk about your reasons for not turning pro as well, did health come into it at all? 'Cause obviously, we know the toll that heavyweight boxing, pro boxing particularly, can have on health. Was that a part of your decision making at all?
No, health is a privilege. Like if you have other options, you're like, oh yeah, my health. But if you have no other options, you don't even consider health. That didn't even pop up in
No.
my head. Like I had bills to pay.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask about, we've talked about your speaking and some of the motivational things you're doing on stage, particularly for students. So what are some of the kind of core messages you like to emphasize when you do your talks?
I speak about the importance of a positive internal dialogue. No one thinks about you more than you think about yourself. And what you think about yourself determines who you become. We don't rise to our potential. We fall to the place of our internal dialogue. I believe people are often as successful as they think they're supposed to be. And they set a level of expectation for themselves through what they tell themselves. And they never can break through. And I found that's for myself as well. And I get the whole woo-woo part behind like writing stuff on post-it notes and the affirmations. But I believe it's true to what your brain can see. So if your brain takes in billions of bits of information, once you start consciously seeing bigger opportunities for yourself, your brain will ignore all those smaller opportunities and show you the bigger opportunities, if that makes any sense.
It does, yes. Well, it's helping people learn those tools to be able to see the potential in themselves, essentially.
Yeah, but the problem is, how do you uncover that? Because we're addicted to our habits. And I'll speak for myself personally. Like, so your brain will show you what you're looking for. A lot of us, we start the day with the news, murder, death, genocide, rape, destruction. We're on social media. We just see politics, hatred, bigotry, racism. ignorance. What do you think we're going to start to spot every day in our lives? But it's hard to tell someone to disconnect from the things that they're so drawn to. John, you're a grown man. Who's going to tell you to put your phone away? Who's going to tell you to limit your use? Many of us don't realize that when we become a certain age, we have to parent ourselves. What would it look like if you limited things in your life purposely for the betterment of yourself? I used to think love meant I gave myself all the things I wanted, but I realized the true love is the discipline to love myself enough to not allow myself to have something in the visions of having something greater in the future.
Leads into what we're talking about. But if you could go back and tell yourself, your younger self, one thing about success and self development, what would it be?
I would say magic is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would tell, if I can go back to 8-year-old me, I will say magic is real. Anything you believe in is real. Every religion is real. If you believe in something, it is real. You can choose to believe in yourself.
And if there's, so I say, you're going back to your 8-year-old self, tell them that magic is real. They can do whatever they want to set their mind to. But if somebody's stuck in that mindset where, like you say, you're filtering everything in the world and just seeing the negatives, what's the first step to try and overcome those negative thoughts and switch that mindset to more positivity?
Before I even answer that, we'll do a little exercise.
Okay.
John, we all have negative people in our lives, right? Can't avoid them. They're just there. Think, and your listeners as well, think of a negative person, right? You got them?
Yep.
Do they think they're negative?
No. I don't believe they do.
How do you know that's not you?
Very good point. Well made.
None of us think that we are negative. So I think all of us should be doing these exercises to make ourselves a little more positive. Now, you have to understand there's always room to see things even in a more positive light. And we're ignorant to our negativity because we feel like sometimes our negativity keeps us safe, but safe and comfortable, nothing good happens there. So I would say take an inventory of the things you consume, whether it's news, whether it's social media, whether it's the group chat that you're in where you're sending, whether it's gossip or terrible videos or just ratchet stuff. What are the things you are consuming? Start to remove those things from your life. And for the people who love watching the news, I understand it feels like it makes a difference, but think about what you've watched in the news in the last 7 days. If you haven't taken action based off something you've learned in the last 7 days, that's not information. That's entertainment. If you could just remove these things from your life for just a month, it won't even move the needle, and see the way it changes your reality and changes your interests. I removed social media off my phone for the month of March, and I check my inboxes from my laptop, but I caught myself reading more now, and I'm listening to audiobooks. And when I go for walking now, when I go for a walk, I listen to my audiobooks. And then April 1st, I put social media back on my phone and it felt yucky. So I removed it off my phone, but it was on my phone for a week again. And now I catch myself open my phone up, going to open up social media like a compulsion. And I realize it's not there. Transparency, I keep LinkedIn as an app on my phone. It's the antisocial social media, but for business, I do it.
Yeah, I think what you've just described probably describes half the people listening at least. It's just so easy to do, and you do get sucked into, like I say, just consuming trash online. And even with the news, you end up believing that what's on the news is surrounding you. But if you look in your own life, it's that stuff's not happening all the time. So yeah, I think that's a great...
Look in your everyday life.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think that's a great lesson to go with. What I wanted to ask, I've got a few quick-fire questions. I know you've just spoken about reading more as well and just being a bit more present recently with the absence of social media. But is there one particular book that's had the biggest influence on you?
Yes. During the pandemic, I read Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. But I read it in a different way. So We read someone's book because we value their opinion. We want to know their insight. And they give it to us and they give us their secrets to success. And we get to the end of chapter 1 and there's an action statement and we turn the page and just read chapter 2. I realize I have a bookshelf of books. Of actions I'm going to get back to eventually. So when I read Think and Grow Rich, it was during the pandemic. Your boy had some time on his hands. So I decided to do everything in the book, as woo woo as it was. I wrote the post-it notes. I did the affirmations. I wrote the goals. I spoke about these things. I visualized. And when I started, one of the things that hit me was in the book was once money starts coming in, it will come in so fast you were wondering where it's been hiding this entire time. And that one just stuck with me and stuck with me and stuck with me. And then one day I woke up and Dogecoin blew up. And from that moment, everything I want, I have been eventually getting. The problem is I'm learning to be more specific. There's certain goals I've had, but I wasn't specific enough and I technically got them. But I'm like, oh, it's real. So 8-year-old me would be so benefited if and but it's only real if you believe it's real.
Yeah. Again, that's great to hear. Yeah, it's really, I love hearing about people's recommendations. And I think you've kind of hit a nail on the head. You'll see a few books behind me, Influence, and there's a few ones up there which got a lot of tips on there. It's too easy just to consume all this info and not act on it. So yeah, it's another great lesson for us to try and act on it and just see what happens. The next question I had for you, Cam, was do you have a daily habit that sets you up for success each day?
Yeah. Also, something I started doing during the pandemic, after I figured out that Think and Grow Rich was right, like that whatever you think comes about, then I learned about your reticular activating system. And if you're looking at the news, you're looking at negative things, that's what you find. So by happenstance, my last name's Awesome. So people send me pictures of these socks that say, I am awesome. There's a sock brand. Turns out I met the lady who owns the company. She puts positive affirmations on socks and underwear because your brain is most receptive to information first thing in the morning. Not negative, not positive, any information first thing in the morning. And I thought, well, most people start their morning with the news. I'm going to change, or they start their day with social media. So I figured I'm going to change the way I start my day just for 30 days. And I started on June 26, 2021. I was going to write a list of 10 things I was grateful for every day. I was not going to repeat anything on this list. I'm grateful for my house. I'm grateful for my car. I'm grateful for my washer. I'm grateful for my dryer. These are two different things. You can be grateful for everything. What I found was, and I have to write this list before I look at my phone, but what I found was it became increasingly more difficult as days went by to find 10 new things. And I really wanted to look at my phone. So I found a cheat code. I would look for things throughout my day to be grateful for, store it in my memory, call it delayed gratification, so I can write my list faster and I can look at my phone. What this started to do is I was consciously looking for the good in my life. After 30 days, I felt different. I can't explain it. And this is a free exercise. You don't have to buy anything. I'm not selling anything. This is something you do personally. And what I realized is I trained my brain to consciously look for all the good things in life and all the things that benefit me. I've written this list every morning since June 26, 2021. I haven't missed a day. And I do that every morning religiously because it is the foundation of the goodness of my life. And I don't know what happens because I was going to do it for 30 days. I don't know what happens when I stop. I'm sure it's going to still be there, but I haven't found a reason to stop. I will say I don't do it always before I check my phone. Like if I have like a 5 a.m. flight, I do it on the plane in the morning, but I do it every morning because I'm constantly, your brain is a muscle. And when I tell people I do 10 things, they're like, that's too many. But if I asked them to come up with 10 things that wasn't going right, it'd be a lot easier for them. You seek what you find. What are you seeking?
So I think the final question I wanted to ask you in this quick fire round is if there's one person you could enter into the Mindset Mavericks Hall of Fame, who would it be and why?
Remember how I said you should celebrate yourself, and I'm a big fan of that. I would like to nominate myself. Can we do that?
Certainly can. Yeah, no, I love it.
So here's one thing that I do where I speak things into existence. I jokingly think I'm the best at everything. All my friends are like, don't ask him. He's going to think he's good at it. Because when you say you're good at things and you're the best at things, you usually become competent in it pretty quickly. Think about the people that say, oh, I'm bad with technology.
Yeah.
And as soon as they run into any trouble, they stop. But if you think you're good at technology, learn, and by after a few years, you master it. So someone brought up golf, and I was like, "Oh, I don't play golf, but I'd probably be really good at it."
No, that's a great answer.
Make it make it a game of how good you are at things. Celebrate yourself. People will treat you as poorly as you treat yourself. If you talk down to yourself all the time, you are more willing to accept people talking down to you. It is free to celebrate yourself. It is free to nominate yourself to the Mindset Mavericks Hall of Fame.
And I think that's a fantastic place to finish podcast. But no, I really appreciate you coming on. It's the first time we've had somebody nominate themselves, but I love the answer. If anyone wants to find out a little bit more about yourself and what you do, where's the best place to find you?
You can find me at camfawesome.com or at camfawesome on all social media because I'm not famous enough for someone to try to take my name.
Fantastic. And I'll put links in the description anyway. But yeah, thank you very much for being a guest. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me, John.